Okay, so what we did last time was we tried to evolve a historical perspective. Yes, yeah, Jenny, you can leave in between. Okay, don't worry. So,
Sir, it's not getting recorded actually.
uh,
It is recording.
it is
It's recording.
recording. Saying,
It is
Okay.
recording.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
it's
okay.
showing me. Okay,
Yeah.
so what we did, that we tried to have an evolutionary perspective of the Nepalese societies, and we gave you 10 epochs. The first epoch was the modern history of Nepal, begins in 1742 when so-called father of the Nepalese society, Prithvi Narayan Shah, ascended and started organizing the community there, and he tried to assimilate 24 principalities which were there, and they were multilingual, they were multicultural, and also multi-religious. In that context, a Nepalese society, multilingual, multi-caste, multi-religion, and multi-regional, community was formed after Prithvi Narayan Shah started. In the second epoch, starting from 1846, when Rana Jang Bahadur Rana, one of the workers, or one of the person who was in the court of Prithvi Narayan Shah, usurped the power and declared himself as prime minister, and he kept the monarchy but left the monarchy powerless. Okay, from then onwards till 1951, there was Rana autocracy, and Ranas ruled as hereditary prime minister of Nepal. The biggest contribution which Ranas made, one was the institution of Prime Minister Rana, which they were actually hereditary ruling, and second was their contribution was introduction of Mulke Ain, just like a constitution of the country, which tried to assimilate so many groups, but instead of assimilating, it also alienated many of the groups. There was a hierarchy which was established in Nepalese society. Okay. Now, therefore, it is important to understand these two epochs. Now, this epoch went for 105 years, and in 1951, Ranas had to leave, or they had to give power to king. And at that time, king was Tribhuvan king was there. Tribhuvan was there as king who actually brought. So there was a case of democracy taking shape, because at this moment in 1946, Nepalese Congress was formed, and people wanted that there should be a representative government. Many social scientists argue that the demands for democratic government in Nepal emerged in the wake of freedom movement which was going in India, and India got independence in 1947, and then onwards there were more voices. There were greater voices with greater speed, and also more dedication that there should be a democratic government which should be established. So in 1951, a new epoch starts, and it goes on till 1960, I think I have done the third epoch is 1951. Okay, that was, I think I did. Yes, 1951 was the third epoch when we see that how the Ranas had to give up power and a new dispensation comes into existence. Some seeds of democracy is sown. And now the fourth epoch is important, which we want to do, and this is 1955, when the king Tribhuvan dies and another king Mahendra takes power. That's where is the fourth epoch that we want to do in little bit more actually elaborate manner, so that we can understand that how democracy has taken seeds and what is the path they were. So King Tribhuvan passed away in 1955. That's where the fourth epoch begins. 55 he passed away, and his son King Mahendra succeed his father Tribhuvan. It is argued that unlike his father Tribhuvan, Mahendra was an assertive monarch who did not want to play a subservient role. And, especially in if we see 1959, the first general election had taken place. In 1959, the first general election had taken place in the multi-party system. Now, Nepalese Congress got the power, which was, of course, formed in 1946. And it is important to note that Nepalese Congress start actually, ruling, governing. But in a very dramatic move, King Mahendra dismisses the democratically elected government in 1960. So 1959, the government was formed, and in 1960, it is demolished by King Mahendra. He usurps power. Why? Because he was a very assertive king. So B.P. Koirala, who was the prime minister at that time of Nepal, now what happened? They were arrested, his ministers were arrested, and they were all put behind the bars. Also, the political parties, they were all disbanded. So the first kind of democracy which was emerging in 1950 in Nepal, that was demolished by the king himself, by the King Mahendra. Now, what was the reaction of India? What was the reaction of India? It is that Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru at that time had made a statement in Rajya Sabha, the upper house of the Parliament of India. And he said, this is complete reversal of democracy. It is complete reversal of democracy and the democratic process. And it is not clear to me that there can be a going back to the democratic process in the foreseeable future. So you cannot go. But this statement was not taken lightly by the Nepalese government, and even it is said that Nepalese society. Why? Because they thought that it is interference in their internal matter, and it is said that after that the relationship between Nepal and also India, they went haywire. There was a lot of disturbance in that. Now, King Mahendra had taken a big risk, it is said that, and especially Partho Ghosh and others, they had tried to argue that King Mahendra took a great risk by dissolving the multi-party elected government. He took a risk, but that risk was not very big risk. Why it was not very big risk to actually dislodge a democratically elected government? Now, it may be argued that it was not a very big risk because uh, there were not there was not a right condition for democratic development. The question is very simple, that whether King Mahendra took a big political risk by toppling the democratically elected government. The answer is no. He did not take a big political risk. Why? Because there were no ripe conditions for political development. There was no assertion on the part of the masses. There were no asserting authority which can challenge the king. Why there was no authority? Why? Because actually there are socio-political conditions. In 1960, if you see the socio-political condition, there was no sizable middle class. One of the very important characteristics to challenge the king, the monarchy, basically was there was no middle class. There was no urban population or even process of urbanization. There was no growth of education, and a good communication network was also lacking in Nepal. Now, it is also argued that the middle class base was very narrow. It was almost confined to Kathmandu Valley. And you know what was the population, urban population at that time? Only 3% of the people lived in urban area, and hardly 10% of the people were literate. So 90% illiterate, 97% living in rural areas. So where was the middle class to challenge the king? Now, according to Myron Wiener, there are certain necessary conditions for the growth of democracy. Wiener has given some necessary condition of growth of democracy. That's what I was drawing from. And he says that the factors at work elsewhere to accumulate social change are urbanization, industrialization. Ashokji, hello. So they are urbanization, industrialization, education, mass communication, and transportation. These are barely evident in Nepal, except in Kathmandu Valley and some portion in Terai. Most of these the process of urbanization, industrialization, education, mass communication, sorry, Dean is calling actually. Never mind. So we will, is recording now? Yeah. So these conditions, the objective conditions for any democratic development, social change, they were missing. And hence, actually, what people say that the king was very much satisfied. He knew that no challenge is going to come. So he did not take any great risk in dismantling the democratically elected government in 1960. That is what actually we are trying to say. So also it's also important to understand that king was also, looking for sources of threat. King was looking the sources of threat to his authority. So he found that this democratic government, elected government, is the real threat. But he was also knowing that it is not direct. Nepalese Congress is not the threat, direct. India is the direct threat through Nepalese Congress. And therefore, instead of fighting directly to India, he tried to dismantle Nepalese Congress. Because Nepalese Congress had a very close relationship with Indian National Congress at that time, because it is said that Indian National Congress was responsible in formation of Nepalese Congress also. So we can see that how in South Asia, one phenomena in one place has a inspiring impact on the other country. So what happens in India has a repercussion in Nepal, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh. What happens in Tamil Nadu has a repercussion in Sri Lanka, and what happens in Sri Lanka, Tamils, has a repercussion in India. So that's why South Asia becomes a very interesting sociological case for analysis of its composition and population. Now, King also had known that BP Korala government had unqualified support of Indian government, and also that it is also that the Koirala government was against China or opposed to China also. Now, in that context, in 1960s, it is very, very important event in Nepalese history, and that's where we see that is a democratic government is toppled. Now, the first pang of democracy is submerged. In place of democracy, what happens? That's the important development in the history of Nepal. That's what we want to record so that we can easily understand the development of democracy in this area. Now, in 1961, Nepalese Congress became very violent, and actually they started demonstrations. They further started antagonizing the King Mahendra, and King Mahendra felt further threatened that, look, they are becoming violent now, Congress. And therefore, in 1962, he has actually other plans. In between 1962, there was a assassination attempt also on Mahendra King. Therefore, he was also feeling threatened. Now, because of that, in 1962, he introduced a new constitution. A new constitution was introduced that replaced the parliamentary democracy system. 1962, under King Mahendra, a new constitution was promulgated that replaced the parliamentary system of the elected government. Now, in place of the parliamentary system of elected government, a new system was introduced. And this system is said to be Panchayat system. Four-tier Panchayat system. Four-tier Panchayat system was. Now, what was this Panchayat system? The Panchayat system was supposed to be four-tier device for running the government. The Panchayat system was a four-tier system for running the government. At the bottom of the pyramid, was the village panchayat. Then there was town panchayat. Then there was district panchayat, and then there was zonal panchayat. Zonal panchayat, and at the highest level was the Rashtra Panchayat, as they say, that national panchayat or parliament, as they say. Now, at the highest level, there was national panchayat. Now, how the members occupied position in these panchayats? Were they nominated, or they elected, or it was mixed? It is said that the elections to the village panchayat and the town panchayat, that was the primary level. अरे यार, तो बहुत परेशान कर दिया.